It's Tuesday, the 21st of April. From the Channel M newsroom, this is the Lunchtime News, and these are today's headlines. Schools here in Greater Manchester could soon be closing for festivals like Ramadan and Yom Kippur.
My son goes to a school where three-quarters is Muslims, and during Eid, there were only 2 children in class.
Also coming up, the man who swapped the courtroom for the checkout.
I hope in a way it's a bit of hope for other people who feel they're perhaps just stereotyped in one job.
And claims more bus lanes aren't marked out properly, leaving bans on cars using them invalid.
Behind me there should be a plate, and that plate number is 959. That should indicate a bus on it. That should be repeated after every side road, and it isn't here.
Good afternoon. First this lunchtime. Some schools here in Greater Manchester could soon be closed for religious festivals like Diwali and Hanukkah. The change is being considered to reduce the number of pupils having time off to mark them. Georgia Calvin-Smith has more on this.
At the end of last year, there was a 17% rise on the previous year in the number of school days lost in Manchester because of pupils staying away for religious observance. That's 28,500 days, and adherence to non-Christian holy dates accounts for nearly 1 in 10 missed days in the city's schools. Now, those where over 40% of pupils will be absent during a religious festival have been given the option of closing for the day.
We have our time off, so why can't they have their time off to celebrate?
I think it's good to respect people's religion, because like my son goes to a school where three-quarters is Muslims, and during Eid, there were only 2 children in class.
Schools will still have to open for the legally required 190 days a year, but heads are being encouraged to consider scheduling teacher training days during non-Christian religious festivals. These could be timed to coincide with religious dates like Yom Kippur, Eid and Diwali. The new plans, expected to be finalised by the summer, will hopefully cut down on absenteeism in Manchester, where levels are currently the 3rd worst in the country. Georgia Calvin-Smith, Channel M News.
5 off-duty police officers have been arrested over claims they attacked a teenager on a night out in Manchester last Thursday. It's alleged the boy was assaulted when violence started between the policeman and a group of teenagers who were causing trouble and urinating on Market Street. One of the officers got out his warrant card and a fight started. One of them has been released without charge. The other 4 have been released on bail. Greater Manchester Police have started an internal investigation, and its professional standards branch is now looking into it. The annual inflation figure has turned negative for the first time since 1960. The retail prices index fell to minus 0.4% in March, down from 0 in February. That takes in mortgage repayments, which have dropped as the Bank of England has cut interest rates. The consumer price index fell in March to 2.9% after February's unexpected rise to 3.2%. It's still well above the government's 2% target. Oil prices have come down over the last 12 months, as well as fruit and veg. The latest report suggests tomorrow's budget will confirm an extension to the so-called stamp duty holiday for anyone buying a house up to £175,000. There's speculation it'll form part of a £1 billion package to support the housing industry. More help would also be given to construction sites, which have ground to a halt. Join us tomorrow from 12 noon for a specially extended lunchtime news. As the budget announced, we'll be bringing you reaction and analysis to the speech from a panel of experts and ordinary consumers from across Greater Manchester. The TUC wants the government to spend more money helping the long-term unemployed back into jobs. Union leaders have named Manchester one of the cities that needs most help. They're suggesting creating 100,000 paid work experience jobs that would last for a year. A solicitor has swapped the courtroom for the checkout after being made redundant. Stephen Worley from Failsworth has just finished an 8-week training programme with a leading supermarket after he lost his job of 37 years. Beverly Walkton has caught up with him.
Not bad, how are you?
No, not too bad.
Good.
Do you need any help with your packing?
No, I'm all right, thank
you. Okay then.
People will be thinking it's a huge leap to go from the legal profession to working in a supermarket.
Yeah.
How are you dealing with that?
Well, fine. I mean, in these days, I think you have to view it as a job. I hope in a way it's a bit of hope for other people who feel they're perhaps just stereotyped in one job, and they think, oh, that's all I can do.
When Steve was axed after 37 years in the job, he applied for everything.
Court usher, passport office, bus driving, tram driving.
But he was either overqualified or underqualified.
Suddenly you've got all these days. How do you fill your days? What do you do?
Steve didn't give up, and finally there was light at the end of the tunnel. Steve's case isn't unique. In fact, people who are made redundant from all walks of life are turning to their local stores and supermarkets to gain employment. And here at Tesco, they reckon they can give people some of that work-life balance.
So the idea is that we start off with, people that are long-term unemployed. They get the first opportunity and then we take it from there. So they end up on an 8-week course, which really is aimed at building confidence and putting all those skills that they already have, although sometimes they don't recognise that they've got them. Steve's talents with working with people in his previous job, those skills are so transferable.
Steve says his pay has been slashed, but he's getting more satisfaction out of this job than he has in his 37 years in the legal profession. Beverly Walkden for Channel M News.
Tesco has announced record profits for the 12 months to the end of February. The supermarket made more than £3 billion for the first time ever. The rise was a smaller one than in the previous year, which is being put down to competition from other stores and a fall in consumer spending. Andy Burnham has personally apologised to the Prime Minister after leaving confidential documents on a London-bound train. The papers were in a case which ended up in Glasgow, where they were handed in to police by a passenger. The Cabinet Minister and MP for Lee said he had no excuses and should have known better. He's the second senior minister from Greater Manchester to lose confidential papers on a train. In October, Stalybridge and Hyde MP James Purnell, who's the Work and Pensions Secretary, sparked a security row after losing confidential documents. Changes that would allow Muslim and Jewish families to ask coroners not to do postmortems on their relatives could now be extended after a trial in Salford and Bolton. The Justice Minister Bridget Prentice is to discuss the idea with religious leaders at Rochdale Infirmary. The new proposals would mean MRI scans would be used instead of cutting open bodies to find out a cause of death. A 13-year-old girl has been pushed into bushes and sexually assaulted in Withington. She was walking home along Rippingham Road when a man stopped her near the junction of Hill Street to ask her name. She turned around and saw 3 men across the road, then carried on walking. Further along, she was grabbed from behind and attacked before she managed to run away. There's concern over a diet pill which is to be available over the counter from tomorrow. Ally, which is also known as Orlistat, will be available without prescription. It'll cost around £50 for a 4-week supply and works by absorbing up to a quarter of the fat in food. But there are worries about some of the side effects. Dr Binoge Nair told Byron and Nikki on this morning's breakfast show more about what they could be.
The dangers of it going sort of off prescription are that nobody's monitoring it at all. The thing with Orlistat is, and any of these weight pills, when you get them from your GP, you have to have tried diet and exercise first. The other thing is you have to keep coming in for regular checks to make sure your weight is going down, to make sure you're not having any side effects, that kind of thing. Orlistat works by blocking fat absorption when you eat something, but side effects, it gives people a lot of wind and stuff just passes straight through their system. A lot of people get diarrhea. It's not a particularly pleasant drug. And the problem is also who's going to regulate who has it. Can somebody, for example, who's very thin, a size 8, but have body image issues, want to get down to a size 4, go in and say, I'll have that.
Is there not another concern as well that this is just a short-term quick fix and that we lose, I don't know, the importance of healthy eating, of regular exercise, that we won't pay it any heed because we can just take a pill for it?
Yeah, exactly. That's the danger, is that people will think, well, I don't need to eat healthily, I don't need to exercise if I want to lose weight, I can just take this pill and carry on eating whatever I want. That's a big danger because, losing weight isn't just about looking good, it's about being healthy, and just by taking this pill, you might look better, but you're not being healthy.
A thief brandishing an axe has stolen thousands of pounds from a bank in Oldham. The masked man threatened a security guard at the NatWest last Thursday morning. He then made off with a box containing the money in a green Renault Laguna that was later found abandoned. The public inquiry into controversial plans for a £100 million racecourse at Salford Forest Park starting. The City's council originally rejected the idea of putting a 6,000-seat stadium on land between Wigan and Salford with a golf course and eco-village, saying it would damage the area's green belt and pose a threat to public safety. Ramblers say they're now backing it if the area gets opened up to walkers and cyclists. Stephen Hawking's employers say he's very ill in hospital. The 67-year-old, who's based at Cambridge University, is said to be undergoing tests. The scientist suffers from motor neurone disease and has spent the night at Addenbrooke's Hospital, where medics say he's comfortable. He's been unwell for several weeks. Now an update on a story we brought you earlier this month. You may remember how we revealed Manchester City Council could have to repay thousands of pounds of fines from drivers caught misusing bus lanes. It's after private hire driver Derek Brocklehurst proved that some warning signs were wrong. Well, now he thinks he's found more of them and has been showing them to Kevin Duffy.
Yes, that's right. Now, there could be some breaking hearts in Manchester City Council's finance department today because private hire driver Derek Brocklehurst reckons that the bus lane signs right here on Great Ducey Street in Strangeways are not right. And Derek's with me now. Derek, what's wrong with the bus lane signs here?
I believe there's 3 points to do with. One of them is that behind me there should be a plate, and that plate number is 959. That should indicate a bus on it. That should be repeated after every side road, and it isn't here.
What else is wrong with the lane?
The other thing is plate number 1049, which is a thick white line separator. That should be 250 millimetres in width, and here it's 280, and then further along the line it actually goes to 360 millimetres.
So you reckon that people can appeal their fixed penalty notices on that basis. Derek, why are you doing this?
Well, it's not a personal crusade. I'm a private hire taxi driver, and we feel that we should be able to use the bus lanes in order to drop off disabled and elderly customers.
Okay. Derek, thanks very much. And it gets more interesting because there is another bus lane that Derek's going to take us to now, and I'll bring you details of that in the Channel M News at 5. Back to you.
Thanks, Kevin. Time now to take a look at the lunchtime sports headlines with those details. Here's Ian Irving.
Thanks, James. Well, we'll start today with the news at Speedway, and Bellevue Aces recorded a 53-40 knockout cup first round first leg win over Ipswich at Kirkmanshire Lane last night. New number one rider Chris Kasperjak completed 5 wins from his 5 races for a 15-point haul, while captain Charlie Yader chipped in with 11. The second leg takes place on Thursday the 28th of May. Sale Sharks are still reeling from the news their league campaign is effectively over after being docked a point and fined £5,000 for fielding an unregistered player. Hooker David Ward was loaned to Manchester but never re-registered and was then named on the bench for the Premiership game against Harlequins. Sale are now 5 points behind London Irish and require a 5-point victory against Northampton Saints on Saturday and for other results to go their way if they are to clinch an end-of-season playoff place. Olympic bronze medalist Tony Jeffries and his new trainer Bobby Rimmer joined Mike and Byron on this morning's breakfast show, and they began by asking Tony why a boxer from the North East had looked to Manchester to find a new coach.
Up where I live in the North East, it's not a great deal of professional boxers up there or coaches, and it seems like the North West's booming at the minute for the professionals up and coming, and likes of Ricky Hatton. So I decided to come here, and I've got no distractions here, and it's great. I'm loving it.
He's an Olympian, isn't that, you know, so that starts it off, doesn't it? These kids have been all the way to the Olympics, and he's won a bronze medal, so, you know, it's a great honour to train somebody like Tony. You know, when you're starting off like in the pro game with a blank canvas, you know, and, you know, you're showing him everything that he wants to know about the pro game.
Moving on to cricket now, and Lancashire have begun their quest for the county championship with a 4-day game at Sussex. Paul Horton and Jimmy Anderson are both in the team, and a short time ago the hosts had reached 43 for no wicket. Meanwhile, coach Ian McGeechan will name his British and Irish line squad later today, with Sale's Mark Cueto widely tipped to be included. However, teammate Andrew Sheridan faces an anxious wait to see if he gets picked ahead of Ireland's Marcus Horan. United face Portsmouth at Old Trafford tomorrow and could find themselves 2 points behind Liverpool when they kick off, should Liverpool beat Arsenal at Anfield tonight. The run-up to that match has been marred by suggestions that Arsenal may field a weakened side, but that's a theory Sir Alex Ferguson doesn't subscribe to.
I don't know what Arson will be thinking about tomorrow. No matter what, Arson will always try. You know, that's the mantra of Arson himself. He's a winner, so I don't expect him not to try. And that's the issue. If they're trying, that's all I can ask for. I'm not concerned myself about the game tomorrow. I think I'm going to concern myself with my own team, and I think that we have enough to think about, and that's why, you know, we got over yesterday quickly.
And we'll have more from Sir Alex on tomorrow's news bulletins. Now, Roy Keane has been offered an unlikely return to management with Queen's Park Rangers, but we believe Keane is reluctant to join the club before the end of the season. And finally, Wigan's veteran keeper Mike Pollitt is in line to be handed a new one-year deal, which could keep him at the JJB as understudy to Chris Kirkland. That's all your sport from now. There'll be more from me at 5 o'clock, but now back to James.
Ian, thank you very much. Still ahead on Tuesday's programme, why we're all being told to help ourselves to some new fruit trees being planted, and we visit the courtroom, stepping back 100 years.
Well, I think it helps to us to look back as to what things were, and it gives us an opportunity to think of what we should be doing in the future in relation to youth courts, youth justice. We're still sending quite a large number of children to prison for serious offences.
You're watching Tuesday's Lunchtime News, and you can find more of our top stories online at channelm.co.uk. On there right now, pictures of the French choir that have been performing here in Greater Manchester, and the posters going up to thank people for their help in bringing some of Manchester's most notorious gangsters to justice. That's at channelm.co.uk. Now, fresh fruit can be pretty expensive, so imagine if you could pick apples and pears for free in your local park. Well, it's not as far-fetched as it sounds. Manchester City Council's setting up fruit trees and vegetable patches in parks and gardens across the city centre, and the first ones are already blossoming.
Well, this is the orchard at Plattfields Park, one of the first of its kind to be set up under a £200,000 scheme by Manchester City Council to try and improve people's understanding, especially children's, of where fruit and vegetables come from. The idea was the brainchild of Paul Peacock, who joins me now. Paul, where did you get this idea?
I was researching a book called The Urban Farmer's Handbook, and in the research, I found quite a body of evidence that talked about how we're going to get our food in the coming half generation, the next 20 to 30 years. Particularly, there's one very famous book called The Coming Famine, which was written by an Australian professor, that he says that famines in the future won't necessarily just happen in the third world countries, they'll happen in Western cities. So with that kind of stark message in mind, I contacted the council in order to be able to get them to do something about having responsibility for food that their own citizens eat. Consequently, the Parks Department picked this up, and we're going to grow food in parks so that people can come and take the food, but also so that they can get the idea that, well, a cabbage comes from the ground, it doesn't come from a supermarket, that an apple comes off a tree, it doesn't come from a shop, and that maybe at some point in the future they'll be able to grow those things for themselves. So there's a huge educational side to all of what we're doing.
OK, Paul, thank you very much. And the scheme will be supported by workshops for local schools. And in the orchards themselves, there'll be signs saying, help yourself when the fruit's ready for picking. And the aim is to have fruit trees and vegetable patches in most of the city's 135 parks and gardens, so they could be coming to a park near you. There are also plans to set up about a dozen beehives to produce local honey. We'll have more details on that in our early evening news.
Thanks, Ben. Manchester's bus drivers are to get extra lessons in how to drive over the city's rising bollards. Several vehicles have ended up spiked on them since they were installed 2.5 years ago. One driver claims they're frightened going over them after the series of accidents. A magistrates court here in Greater Manchester's dusting off its files from a century ago to show what used to happen to child criminals. It comes at a time when people complain today's legal system's too lenient, especially with young offenders, as Kevin Duffy now reports.
You're an ungrateful scoundrel, Caitlin. The sentence of this court is that you'll be sent to prison for 4 months with hard labour. Every alternate fortnight you shall be...
4 months in jail for stealing a pair of shoes. That's justice Victorian style for a 9-year-old boy. It's a real court case reenacted in the Rochdale courtroom where it happened a century ago.
And the sentences they received were very brutal,
sharp and shocking on occasions. And what we want to try and show people today is how things have changed. The emphasis was on punishment, now it's on helping the child.
What brought about this change is the 1908 Children and Young Persons Act. However, there might still be progress to be made, says one of the VIP guests, 21st century Judge Anthony Russell.
Well, I think it helps to us to look back as to what things were, and it gives us an opportunity to think of what we should be doing in the future in relation to youth courts, youth justice. We're still sending quite a large number of children to prison for serious offences.
Back in 1909, Henry Caitlin was the child in the dock of the court. He told magistrates,
"And my mum and my sister have died, and my dad's in prison and he's an alcoholic."
However, as the 100-year-old court record shows, this 9-year-old boy's plight cut no ice with the magistrates.
Oh, you little brat.
Kevin Duffy for Channel M News.
Now, you might remember yesterday we told you about the soldier who was millimetres from death when a Taliban bullet hit his helmet in Afghanistan. Leon Wilson was back behind his machine gun within an hour of that. But now his mum, Jennifer Hughes, has been speaking of her relief at how he survived.
Well, the first I heard about it was when Leon called me, and his words were, "I'm okay, so don't worry, I've been shot." Right, where have you been shot? I've been shot in the head. Well, it went through the padding in my helmet, but I'm okay. It didn't touch me. But he was very subdued, and I said, "Are you sure you're okay?" And he says, "No, I'm okay, Mum, I'm fine. I'm just letting you know that I'm safe, I'm all right."
I opened my eyes and looked to my left at Private Withers and said, "Have I just been shot?" In which he sort of swore a lot and said, "Yeah, you have." The medic turned a bit grey, and I shouted to Corporal to say that I've just been shot in the head.
He didn't have to go out to Afghan, but that was his choice. He said, "No, I want to go," and I said, "Well, fine. You know what you're going out to, and if that's your choice, that's your choice." And he was just raring to go.
Well, there's plenty of sunshine around this lunchtime, and that's the way most of the rest of the week is looking as well. With the full forecast now, here's Michelle Eagleton.
Well, we had a great start this morning across Greater Manchester. Plenty of sunshine around and highs of 16 degrees. Now, this afternoon, it's going to be a little bit cloudier, but it is going to stay mainly dry. Those temperatures, though, dropping overnight to a chilly 5 degrees. Don't despair, though, because the next couple of days are going to be absolutely gorgeous. Actually, starting off with tomorrow, it will be a little bit misty, but later on, we are going to get lots and lots of sunshine out there. So make sure you've got your sunglasses to hand. And that sunshine is set to continue for the rest of the week. It is going to be absolutely glorious.
This is Channel M, our top stories. Some schools in Greater Manchester could soon be closed for a series of non-Christian religious festivals. Head teachers will be given the option of shutting rather than carrying on with lessons, with many pupils absent. 5 off-duty police officers have been questioned over claims they assaulted a teenager while on a night out in Manchester. Their bosses at the Greater Manchester Force are now investigating. Those are today's headlines, and that was the Lunchtime News. Join us from 12 noon tomorrow for a live budget special, reaction and analysis as it happens. But for now, bye-bye for now.